covering the operations of a coffee bar is one thing. How do we grind? How do we brew? How do we make espresso and coffee drinks? But another critical element for the foundation before you go any further is safety. Safety for you as a barista, safety for your customers and guests as they come into your cafe or roll through your drive-thru. And so as we consider safety, we need to consider so much about cleanliness and just those repeated practices that put together a good safety program. So one way is managing your space, managing your workflow. So in general, if you want to work from right to left and you're preparing your drinks, you're preparing your espresso, you're making your drinks, and then you're finishing them. Or if you're preparing, finishing, and sending off to the other side, that's just this basic concept of workflow. In what direction do things start and get delivered to the customer or the guest? Also, if you have more than one person working behind the bar, which is very common, you want to make sure that you don't create a bottleneck. What is a bottleneck? Just like you have a bottle and it tapers up and it gets thinner, that's that point where it gets thinner, and so that's where bumping, crashing, spilling, accidents can happen. So avoid your bottlenecks and be aware of your bottlenecks. If you just constantly spend a lot of time on grinding and preparing the espresso and you always need more time on another section, then you need to address that. Also with taking cash or taking payments, washing your hands before you do the drink preparation, there are bottlenecks that come up. And those bottlenecks can create safety hazards. Another thing that can create safety hazards is spilling water. So below the espresso machine, down here we have a non-slip mat. And so you can walk on this mat and it's quite convenient to not slip and fall. If you're preparing espressos, if you're washing dishes, if you have water spilling, if you accidentally spill some milk, you're still going to be safe. You're not going to slip because this is a high movement area. You're refrigerating your products, you're labeling your products. This is when this syrup was opened. This is when this syrup should be put away or thrown away. Everything should have a label. Everything should be clear as to this is when it started, this is when it should finish, and this is when we get rid of it. You're protecting yourself and creating peace of mind. Every day, I don't have to worry, is this old? Should I still be using this? Should I get rid of this? You know exactly what's going on because there's a checklist in place, safety procedures and processes. So you and your team, you should establish these safety checklists, these safety processes, so that you know when inventory comes in, when you prepare drinks and inventory is used or goes out. Something that we really need to talk about that we haven't really touched on much is water. And we talk about this in the brewing section because when you brew a cup of coffee, 98% approximately of that cup of coffee is water. Very little of that cup of coffee is actually the dissolved coffee material. Well, in an espresso shot, when you brew a shot of espresso, the concentration of coffee in this shot of espresso is much higher, but you're still at least about 90% water, okay? So even if you put in, let's say you put in 20 grams of coffee and you brew, 55 milliliters of water, you have a great extraction concentration dissolved into that water. And so although the extraction level changes and the concentration level changes, still about 90% of this espresso shot is water. And it's hard to believe because the espresso is so strong compared to a brewed cup of coffee. But if you start with good water, then you have a chance for good coffee. If you start with bad water, you have no chance for good coffee. It's kind of like garbage in is going to be garbage out. Now, something good in gives you the chance to get something good out. So what could make your water bad? Well, we have a water filtration system set up So we can filter particulate matter. If there's any chemicals such as chlorine or fluoride from the city water, we will catch that in the filter. Before it comes into the water boiler, before it's pushed out of the group heads, before it's brewed into the espresso, we will be catching those chemicals and not allowing them to come into the cup. You can imagine when we have such a small amount of coffee dissolved into water that if the water smells like chlorine, the coffee is going to smell like chlorine. Or if the water has a strange old aroma from the old pipes, maybe in the building or in the city, then that old smell will come through in the coffee. So you can spend a lot of money on good coffee and then destroy it with bad water. Now, if you start with good water and start with good coffee, you've got a good start. What about mineral content? Mineral content is really dangerous, and it's dangerous for a couple of reasons. One, it can hurt your machines, and you'll see that on water boilers. You might see that as calcium buildup. From the milk we get calcium buildup, but also on the hot water tap and other places where water might drip. You may have seen that in your home before. Mineral builds up when water boils or dissolves. It leaves behind minerals. And that's because water is a natural product. It comes from the earth. But you don't want water to be hard with a high mineral content in your boiler. Because as it builds up in your boiler, it becomes like this chunky, rocky salt, almost like buildup, calcium buildup, mineral deposits. And that can obstruct the flow of water through your group heads. It can obstruct the ability to produce steam or to produce pressure. And mineral content will create problems for your very fancy or expensive equipment. The second reason is that a high mineral content, which we measure with refractometers or other various tools, we measure it in parts per million. If your parts per million is over 250, you may be experiencing under extraction. Now, I don't want to get too far into this, but imagine that water is like a holding device. And you've all put spoons of sugar into water and you've stirred it up, or spoons of salt into water and you've stirred it up. Well, it's a lot easier to dissolve 1 teaspoon of sugar or 1 teaspoon of salt than it is 5 teaspoons. If you put in too many teaspoons of salt or sugar, you keep stirring and stirring, and it just doesn't seem to want to dissolve. That's because the water, actually, those water molecules will hold only so much sugar and salt. That's the parts per million. So if the water is already saturated with mineral content, if it's already really full of calcium and magnesium and sodium and the other things that occur naturally in water, well, guess what? When you introduce that water to espresso or to coffee, that water can no longer dissolve and suspend coffee molecules because it's already full of minerals. It's already full of calcium and magnesium and sodium and all the other things that occur in mineralized water. A little bit of mineral is good. Minerals add flavor and sweetness to water. But if your water is really hard and really full, then it's like it says, sorry, I'm already loaded up. I can't dissolve and carry your coffee. So you're going to actually under extract your coffee if your water is too hard. And that's something that is really a surprising enigma. It's hard to imagine when you're just brewing coffee and you wonder, why does my coffee taste so strange when I go to my mom and dad's house or when I go to my friend's house? Well, maybe it's because the water is so hard and full of minerals that it can't even dissolve and suspend the coffee. So you can harm your equipment, and you can definitely fail to properly extract or bring out the full beauty of your coffee. So water, 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 can't emphasize it enough. We saved it to the end, not because it's the least important, but because it's perhaps the most important. I can't say that. There are so many things that are important here. The customers and the service and the cleanliness and the safety and just the art and tradition of espresso. All of these things are so important, but we're just going to finish it off with a really important aspect about water. If you have any questions about water, you want to seek a professional. There are guidelines, like I said, anywhere from 50 or 75 parts per million to 250 parts per million. There's a spectrum in the brewing intermediate and brewing professional and other courses that we will look at. But for this course, do know that if you're experiencing these strange problems with your equipment, if it's constantly getting clogged, you may have a water problem and you just need to install some filters. If you have consistent extraction problems with your brewing or your espresso, you can't figure out why does the coffee taste so good at this place or this cafe, but it tastes so bad when I make it, it may be a water problem. So that's what I want to leave you with as we wrap up this course. We've covered a lot here, and I'm really proud of you for sticking with it, hanging in there. I know that it'd be great if we could just stand behind the coffee machine and we could work on these espressos together, but please do add your comments, do add your questions, and keep this a growing, evolving course together so that you can advance to Barista Intermediate, Barista Professional, and expand into some of the other courses. I know that you'll love them, especially the brewing and the sensory if you are on the barista side, or others if you're interested in expanding in your coffee career. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next lecture as we wrap things up. You are about to jump into your exam, so feel free to go back, review any of the material, ask any questions. This exam that I've provided is a practice mock exam, which replicates what you will experience from the Specialty Coffee Association if you choose to get certified. And if you made it this far, I am positive that you will do well and you can get certified when you take that exam. So, good luck, and I'll see you soon.
Oh, hey there. So just in case I forget to tell you or you haven't seen it already, go ahead and check out howtocoffeepro.com, where we have lots of coffee classes available online for you, or www.sca.training. And you can find resources, lab tools, tasting kits, all kinds of stuff that you need to up your specialty coffee journey. So if you're not already on the email list, then you're probably missing out on some of the great options we have at howtocoffeepro.com or at sca.training. As always, if you leave your comments below, if you subscribe and follow, and if you join that email list, you're not going to miss out on all the great offers